the Everything But Politics podcast.
All right, let's rock. With us today is our guy, Greg Jones, three-time NCAA Wrestling Champion at West Virginia University, as well as founder and coach at Killcliff Fight Club here in South Florida. Greg, how are you, brother? It's good to be with you.
I'm doing good, fellas. Thank you for having me on, and good way to bring in 25, man. Happy New Year to all y'all.
Happy New Year. Let's do it.
God bless. So, Greg, I've told you in the past, Evan and I are not that accustomed to your world of fighting and wrestling and MMA. So this episode is going to be a real learning experience for us both. So let's start.
Thank you for setting that pretense, too. I know how to answer questions.
Yeah. So I would imagine most of our audience probably feels similarly to how Evan and I do. So you're an NCAA, not just once, not just twice, three-time NCAA champion at West Virginia. Prior to that, though, walk us through, I know you're from outside of Pittsburgh. Walk us through your upbringing and what led you to becoming a champion.
What led me to becoming a champion is probably more difficult to answer and probably pretty long. But I would start with the first part of the question, and that would be my upbringing, the family I grew up with, from a family of wrestlers, a family that valued hard work and determination, coached by a father who coached us very hard. Maybe didn't have the best wrestling mind, but from a coaching standpoint, he was very good and very effective. He probably, we wrestled in my family basement. It was probably a 30 by 30 room, and my dad probably produced, if I had to guess, probably around 25 Division I wrestlers from that basement. So, my older brother, that's usually my answer when I get asked questions like that, is I usually come back to my older brother. My older brother was is still 5 years older than me. He went to West Virginia University. I saw how he was treated, how well he competed there. So it was an easy route for me to sign with West Virginia and go there. And he was a two-time NCAA runner-up and a third-place finisher. So that made, him doing that made things seem very realistic to me. No matter how high my goal was, I just saw the guy that I lived with, grew up with, ate the same food, drank the same water, becoming an elite college wrestler. And that was just kind of part of the motivation to pull me along.
Nice. Greg, at what age did you start wrestling then?
I don't know. I've been told several times that I've started wrestling at 3 years old.
Okay.
That seems kind of wild to me. Because I especially as an adult, I see 3-year-olds now, but it may be true. I was started wrestling young enough that I don't even remember when I started, or even my first couple seasons of wrestling.
And did you play any other sports? Yeah.
I was just talking to my daughter just now. I really believe that as an athlete, a developmental athlete, you should play as many sports as you can, as long as you can. So I grew up, I played football. I played a lot of baseball. I ran track. I ran track for 2 seasons because I had a shoulder injury. And once I graduated college, I had a workout with the Pittsburgh Steelers to join them. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's sweet.
So at what age, you said play as many sports as possible for as long as you can. When did you choose wrestling as the only one?
I didn't choose wrestling. By the time how it is, like when you're in school, you're like, hey, you going to try out for the baseball team this year? Or you going to try out for the soccer team? Like, that wasn't a thing for us. It wasn't, are you going to wrestle this season? You know what I mean? By the time I was old enough to realize or understand that I may or may not have a choice at this, it was already part of who I was. I was already doing it for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I don't recall, but
yeah.
So.
All right.
Well, and I have friends who wrestle, and they always talk about that there's no harder conditioning and training than being a wrestler. Like, based on how you train your guys, do you think that's a true statement?
Absolutely. Wrestling is the hardest, yet probably the most beneficial sport to a young athlete than any other sport that I can think of.
Interesting. Now, if I were to come to your class and never wrestled before, have no background, what is kind of like your process in training them to get them to get them
Yeah, well, back
going,
to
you
your
know?
back to your
Yeah.
original question. Your first question was, what makes it so difficult too is not only
Mhm.
it's a one-on-one sport, it's highly combative, but there's also a mixture between aerobic and anaerobic energy systems. So you can't just be a distance runner and train long distance. You just can't be a sprinter and do short sprints all week. You have to develop a training schedule that fits that type of energy system.
Gotcha.
If you were to walk in the gym, where would I start you? I wouldn't. I wouldn't. If you join our team, I would, and you started practicing with us, I
Yeah.
would probably just observe you for the first 3 or 4 months. Um, there's good, like, it's just like the sport of wrestling is so complex. I shouldn't say complex, but it's very dynamic in the sense that, you know, uh, I can start somewhere technically teaching you, and then it's more than likely probably well beyond what you're capable of. So I find myself having to often dial it back, dial it back, dial it back. So so when we get a new athlete for the first 3 or 4 weeks, I don't coach them a lot. I mean, I'll give them some input and stuff like that, but I'm mostly watching their body language, watching how they uptake skills, watching how they compete, and watching their energy and intensity. And then I'll build that from there, you know.
Totally. Yo, Greg, I want to take a step back, go to your 15, 16, 17-year-old self. You had an older brother, like you mentioned. Were you humbled by that, or were you a cocky little kid and got, humbled going to West Virginia and getting your ass beat on the mat?
I was, but my disposition's, I'm a pretty humble, easygoing guy to begin with. So,
Even when you were 15, 16 years old.
uh, perhaps so. Like, I don't remember being that, come on, you try me, guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't remember. It's just not really who I am. But, um, I grew up with, there was 5 of us that grew up in the same house. I had 4 brothers and sisters. And the worst thing we can do in our household was fight amongst each other. Obviously, we did it. We made sure we didn't get caught. But if my dad caught any of us fighting each other, there would be some pretty heavy price to pay.
Fighting is in,
Any
sparring and practicing.
fighting, wrestling in the house, roughhousing, punching each other. Like, now that I have kids, I get it because there's 5 of us in a very small house. We didn't have a lot of money, so we break shit. That's gonna cost a lot, and part of that's gonna be on from our ass too. You know what I mean? But now that I have kids, and I hear them bumping into stuff and doing stuff, like, I get why that rule was established. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and now that you're like a father and a coach, right? When you look back at not only your father, but your coach at West Virginia, what are some things you learned that you now instill in the young men and women you teach today?
Um, See, I'm not good with them open-ended questions. Like, if you ask me what my favorite movie was, I would struggle. My favorite color, but um, I don't know. Can you down that in a little bit for me?
Sure. Let's go to your father, right? When you are let's just say coaching, not
Yep.
parenting. When you're coaching on the mats every day, people sweating, beating ass, you're tired, fatigued. Um, what are some things? Because I've heard you talk a lot about fatigue in a lot of these previous interviews. What are some
Hmm.
things that you've, I guess, really uh, learned, taken in from your coach at West Virginia, on
Well,
how to not only be a champion, but to like inspire young
yeah,
people?
no, I was very, very fortunate. I was coached by a lot of very good coaches and a lot of very good people. I was coached by Kerry Collard, who's one of the best wrestlers that are coming out of Pennsylvania. Um, Zeke Jones was my assistant coach, who was voted the world's most technical wrestler. He was a world silver medalist, Olympic runner-up also. And Craig Turnbull, who I also shared. I replaced Zeke as the assistant coach, and I shared office with Coach Turnbull for 10 years. And Turnbull comes at it from like from a pretty heavy psychological background. So sharing office with him, having that stuff rub off on me, I think is a good mix, with my energy, my intensity, but also add the psychological component to it. And no means am I going to say I'm a sports psychologist. I have a sports psychology degree, but I'm not a psychologist. Um, so I just learned a lot just sitting there and just kind of taking it all in. Just dealing with dealing with people, dealing with diverse groups of people from, diverse backgrounds. Yeah, just kind of things like that. It just kind of really go along with any or a lot of professions. But in our sense, we have probably 70 athletes. So it's just really cool from that aspect to go to work,
Well, it sounds like a lot of it, not now, but when you're coming up, you weren't even seeking it. You kind of just were a product of your environment, and from there, were able to be a sponge.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't remember. I never decided that, hey, I'm gonna go wrestle. Like this just never happened. And
Mhm.
like I said, by the time I realized it was already part of who I was.
Greg, let's talk a little bit about Kill Cliff Fight Club.
Mhm.
When did you found Kill Cliff Fight Club, and what was the goal behind it?
Well, the original goal, and the goal still is to be the first true, real, genuine MMA combat sports team. In an individual sport, the team component isn't really stressed that much. Just to go along with fighters, kind of like that warrior mentality, tend to be a little bit selfish. So I'm of the opinion, even with wrestling too, the more people we can have in that circle, the stronger we become. The more places leadership comes from within the group, the better off our group is going to function. So we're not quite like a fighter or player fighter led organization, but I truly believe in spreading out the leadership and let those I think people have an innate desire to grow and meet their potential, and our job is to create the opportunity to do that.
And are most of the men and women who train there, are they just training there because they love it and they want to get better? Or are they training because they want to go to Bellator, they want to go to the UFC and
Yeah,
win
there's usually
championships?
a long term. There's usually a long term. Usually, like you said, usually it's getting to that next level, making that next jump. But we have a lot of fighters that are in and out. To go back, so at Killcliff, I started with Henry Hooft, which was my partner, and then a couple other people. But so whenever I moved to Florida 10 years ago, I started working for the Black Zillions. Is whenever me and Henry got together. Whenever that team folded, Henry and I kind of bounced around a little bit. We had fighters. We just used a gym in Boynton for, I don't know, probably 6-9 months until we got our space in Fort Lauderdale. And then we were there for probably 2 years, and we've been at Killcliff ever since. But we also have some some business things in within our structure that really allows us to do more than most other gyms can do.
Awesome. And given you've been doing this in Florida for the last decade, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
What these people that do make it to that next level, whether that be Bellator or UFC, what do they have in common?
Usually it comes down to their consistency. Um, we don't take attendance at practice. These guys are professional athletes. Um, but at some points we do have some variation in attendance, but not for the people you're talking about.
And
They're there when they're supposed to be there getting work done.
at what point is talent not enough, but rather hard work and discipline wins?
I see. I don't believe in talent. Talent is overrated. Like, one, talent is overrated, and two, it's a trap. I think when a young athlete is extremely talented, often grows up learning all the wrong lessons. He doesn't get the taste of diversity. He doesn't know how to bounce back from a difficult situation, and all those types of things. And you got to be careful how you define talent. Also, is talent how fast, how far you can jump, how high you can jump, all that. That's talent. But at the same time, being able to work very hard over a long period of time, I believe is also a talent that can be practiced, learned, and developed and enhance your athletic career or even your personal life. So I mean, I've seen it too many times, that immaculate high school athlete that goes to college and is like, hey, whatever happened to such and such, that kind of thing. Yeah, so I just, if you can find that rare athlete that is physically talented but also has the intangible things that go along, the hard work, the discipline, perseverance, all that stuff stacked on top of it, then you got something that could be really special.
Yeah.
Now, when you were going to college and your brother being 5 years older at West Virginia, was there a moment prior to going to college where you maybe thought you were super talented, but at the same time, you knew your brother was probably, I would say, probably better than you because he was bigger and older and could take you down? Did that help your drive and adversity when going to West Virginia?
Man, I was in the room for probably 3 or 4 months and already smoking my brother. No. I wasn't smoking, but I was taking him down. Maybe not
Yeah.
beating him, but really, really early in my carear.
At what age do you think you were able to start actually being competitive with your brother?
Oh, so we didn't wrestle before college,
Okay.
really. So whenever I got to college, that's the cool part too about my brothers is he's 5 older than me. Whenever I got there, he coached me. Whenever I won my first national championship, I ran off the mat and he was the first guy I got to hug.
That's special.
And then my younger brother is also a wrestler. When I graduated, I stayed on to coach, and then he came, I got to coach him. So it's like, you don't often get the times as brothers to get to know each other as men. And that was just a cool time to do it. But I was probably within the first semester of college, I was probably getting the better of my older brother, I think. And I got pretty good pretty fast. So I didn't wrestle. I mean, in high school, I wrestled 3 months out of the year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wrestled during wrestling season. That was it, because I did play all those other sports. So whenever I got a steady dose of wrestling, good, competent coaching, as well as a good, competent strength and conditioning program, my potential just took off.
So, you mentioned that you don't gain like the talented kids growing up. I could reflect they were talented when you're 12, 13, 14, maybe throughout high school, and then they're kind of forgotten unless they have that work ethic like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of work ethic and just grinding, you won fucking 3 NCAA championships, but I would imagine
I got lucky.
nonetheless, I would imagine the 1 year you didn't win, you learned so much more from that experience than winning the 3.
That's a good call. That's the most most valuable tournament I've ever wrestled in. Was that my sophomore year? Whenever I didn't do so well, I went in the national tournament undefeated. I just couldn't find it during that tournament. But reflecting on that, whether it be a week after it happened, or probably more so now, whenever I get older, as I get older, I do believe that is the most value experience I ever had, and I don't think I would have became the wrestler I became without that occurring.
And it is amazing, right? Watching, I mean, you were 19, 20 years old. We were watching the football games yesterday.
Yeah.
These kids, or millions of people watching, they're 18, 19, 20. The opportunities that, these people get at such a young age, and then to reflect on it all these years later has got to be like, wow, like what a time in my life to be able to perform at that high of a level in front of all these millions of people. And I would imagine it's hard to appreciate while you're doing it. Here we are reflecting, and it's like, damn, bro.
Well,
that
that's
was
a good
like,
word. That's
Yeah.
a very good word choice. Appreciation.
Yeah.
Because winning my first national championship, whenever you go through a tournament the way that I did my freshman year, with what seemed at the time relative ease, I don't think you appreciated it as much because it came kind of easy. You put a lot of work into it, but I didn't have a close match. You know what I mean? But absolutely, after my sophomore year, it definitely made me gain a deeper appreciation. I was on track to be probably the 3rd or 4th person to win 4 NCAA championships. I didn't. I was very close, but I still appreciate the path that I took, and obviously that sophomore year that we're talking about.
What's it? Go ahead,
ahead.
Evan.
I was just say, of all 3 of the state championships, national championships, which one was the most memorable to you?
I get that question a lot, and it's really hard to answer because they're all different.
Yeah.
You know, obviously winning as a freshman was really cool. And I think that's if you have a high goals, I think as a college wrestler, your freshman year is the best swing you will ever have at that because you're young, no one knows about you, you got maybe a little chip on your shoulder and things like that. And guys now are really good at a really young age. But my freshman year is the first one. You know, you cherish that one.
Yeah.
My second one was kind of like redemption, if you will. Like, okay, yeah, my freshman year was not a fluke. I belong here. This is who I am. This is the quality wrestler and person I am. And then my senior year, uh, I'm really proud to say my senior year NCAA tournament, the last tournament that I wrestled in, was the most enjoyable experience I've ever had in the sport of wrestling. Um, so yeah, they're just I can't differentiate between one and the other. They're all special in their own little way, like your kids, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Well,
given your track record at West Virginia, I mean, post graduation, did you ever, consider UFC or Bellator route?
No, so that would have been 2005. I don't know what Bellator was doing then, but I know the UFC was kind of just starting to
Yeah.
take off a little bit. So
mhm.
it's still young, but it was obviously very, very young. So that wasn't really an option for me. I So I graduated in June. I signed my first contract in July on July 1 to be the associate head wrestling coach. But with that said, I extended my wrestling career beyond college a little bit. I didn't compete very much, but I did
Gotcha.
train, I ended my senior season with a groin injury that required surgery, which also cut in the work I was doing with the Steelers also.
It's a shame that as a three-time champion, you weren't around during the NIL era,
Ain't that crazy?
Yeah.
right?
People ask me, "What would you get? What do you think you would get?" I don't know. I don't even know what the market is.
I
You know,
think,
I know some wrestling programs are throwing around $500,000 to poach kids
wow.
from other schools and stuff like that, but I don't know. It's
Yeah,
getting
probably
crazy
would
out
have been
there.
a couple 100,000 considering these quarterbacks are getting like $1 to $5 million.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If I mean, if you want to stay in college because you make more money than what you would on a rookie deal, something seems kind of messed up to me. I don't know.
We were
Totally.
just talking about that with our dad. It as like great as it is for like the kids, like it's in a way ruining college sport.
But
Right.
it,
I'm not against it. Like I'm not against players being paid for everything they provide to the university. But what's going on right now, I think, is just
well,
bonkers.
another thing that's kind of crazy, it's like West Virginia doesn't have the same funding in football that Ohio State or Alabama does. So if there's no salary cap on how much you could pay these kids, none of these smaller programs are ever going to be
Well,
able to
it's going to
compete.
turn like women's basketball. It's going to be the same
Yeah.
3 or 4 teams every single year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Well,
think.
even before NIL, it was always Bama, Georgia, Ohio
Yeah.
State. Even without the NIL, now it's gonna amplify that you're only gonna get the stars.
I think that's true. I think
Yeah.
that's true. But we'll see. I don't know.
Another thing that's crazy is, 18-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid. Here's $4 million.
No, it's nuts. Well, what I think about too is what's the penalty for jumping in that portal and leaving? If we invest this $4 million in you, will you just pick up and leave? No, 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 no. Something has to happen. Something has to come from the university you're going to. In my opinion, the university you're transferring to should have to pay something. I don't know, but giving these guys free reign to earn as much as they want and go to as many schools as they want, and in some ways almost wrestling as many years as you want. You guys got guys at 25, 26 years old still wrestling in college because they got 6 or 7 years of college wrestling. It's
Mhm.
crazy to me.
Yeah. And is the wrestling world being as like, I don't want to use the word polluted, but for lack of a better word, I'll use polluted. Is it being polluted the same way that college football is?
I don't know because I'm not really close to either culture right now.
Okay.
I don't, but knowing what I know, I would say any of those issues, if they are in wrestling, which I'm sure they are, pale into comparison to what's going on with football and basketball.
Agreed. There's just so much that like the football and basketball literally makes so much money for these universities. It's really insane.
Yeah, and the coaches too. These coaches have been making money for a long time, and the players do deserve something. I just don't know what. I don't think it's unlimited. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, not totally.
Absolutely.
So at this point in your
What's
life,
the thing? The thing that we're waiting to hear. It's only been 2 or 3 years NIL's been in, and we don't have a lot of tax screw up stories. That's what we don't hear about, of how on top of how prepared these athletes are as college students to take on this money. And 2, are they doing appropriate things with the IRS to check up all their taxes and stay up to date on that? Because if you got a $4 million NIL deal and you fuck up your taxes, and that well dries up, you got to have a lot of money coming due. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Anyway,
Well, how would have 19-year-old Greg Jones handled being given $500,000?
I don't know. I don't know. Probably not good.
Be in Miami.
Almost certainly not good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like you're not supposed to have that kind of money in college. I don't know. Like you have some players making more than their head coach. It's fucking wild.
It is fucking wild. So Greg, like I said, this is first episode of 2025, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
With that said, for you and the Kill Cliff team here in 2025, what are some of the things you guys are looking to accomplish this year?
We haven't. I don't know if we writ down or really set out with any specific goals, but we have a cool thing going on right now. So I guess if you gave me one thing, is just continue and enhance the track that we're on, continuing to develop good young fighters, strengthening our room, training partners and things like that. So that's probably what I would say, is just build off of the success that we've had up to this point, and continue to attract quality fighters and set in a great atmosphere for them to take a swing at all their goals.
Awesome. And anything that we should be looking out for this year with any of your guys, or any 2025 storylines?
I don't think really anything specific. But like I said, we got about 60 fighters. So there'll be a lot of fights coming up. I think we do probably 130, 140 fights a year.
Awesome.
So yeah, I don't think anything really specific.
When I know in the past you've traveled globally, any plans coming up for that?
Travel plans. I don't have anything booked right now, and so that means I probably don't have anything set up for the next 6 weeks. But I don't know. I'll be out there on the road. I'll be going somewhere. Going into May. At the end of April of this past year, I had 12 or 13 trips in already. So it's slowed down significantly since then, but whatever. I go where I gotta go. We gotta go get paid, you know?
No doubt. Well, Greg, this has been long overdue, right? You and I have been discussing this, so
yeah, you've been bullshitting, man.
Yeah. Hey, bullshitting up until now, but we're happy to have this on record in the books, and first episode of 2025 is a good one. So God bless, Greg. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, man.
Appreciate you. Guys, thank you very much. See you next Monday.